What if everything happening around you, every setback, every frustration, even every triumph wasn't the real story? 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosopher Epictetus dropped a truth bomb that still shakes us today. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Think about that for a second. The traffic jam that ruins your morning, the criticism that stings, the unexpected curveball life throws your way. None of these things define your reality. Your reaction does, and here's the radical idea at the heart of Stoicism. You have the power to choose that reaction, to transform chaos into clarity, and to turn every obstacle into fuel. This isn't just ancient wisdom, it's a modern superpower. Because let's face it, we live in a world that feels increasingly out of our control. But what if the key to thriving isn't controlling the world, but mastering your response to it? The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. Some things are up to us, and some things aren't. And the real magic happens when you stop wasting energy on what you can't change and start focusing on the one thing you can, your mindset. Imagine waking up tomorrow and seeing every challenge as a chance to practice resilience, every annoyance as a test of your calm. That's cognitive reframing in action, shifting your perspective to reclaim your power. So here's the question we're going to explore together. What if your worst day could be your greatest lesson? What if the very things that feel like setbacks are actually shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more unshakable? That's the Stoic mindset shift, and it's not about ignoring pain or pretending life is perfect. It's about recognizing that you get to write the story of your life, not your circumstances. Over the next few minutes, we'll dive into how this philosophy can transform the way you see challenges, relationships, and even yourself. Because when you realize your reaction defines your reality, everything changes. Stoics don't ignore reality, they redefine their relationship with it. At the heart of this philosophy is a simple but profound division: the things we can control and the things we can't. Your thoughts, your choices, your reactions, these are yours to command. The weather, other people's opinions, the past, those are outside your power. And here's the game-changing insight. Suffering doesn't come from the events themselves, but from our resistance to what we can't change. Epictetus put it bluntly: happiness and freedom begin with understanding this basic truth. Some things are up to us and some things are not. Picture this: you're stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting. You can pound the steering wheel, let frustration boil over, and arrive drained. Or you can take a deep breath, accept the delay, and use the time to listen to an audiobook or collect your thoughts. The traffic hasn't changed, but your experience of it has. That's the dichotomy of control in action. The Stoics weren't suggesting we shrug off life's difficulties. They were teaching us to meet them with clarity instead of chaos. This mindset isn't about passivity, it's about redirecting your energy where it actually matters. Imagine your focus as a spotlight. Shine it on external forces and you'll feel helpless. Aim it at your own responses and suddenly you're back in the driver's seat. Try this today. Pick one thing you've been stressing over that's truly beyond your control: a coworker's attitude, a cancelled flight, even the rain on your day off. Now ask yourself, what if I stopped fighting it? What if instead of resenting it, I used it as a chance to practice patience, adaptability, or gratitude? That shift from resistance to empowerment is where Stoic wisdom comes alive. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, left us with a timeless reminder: you have power over your mind, not outside events. At first glance, that might sound like wishful thinking, but the Stoics weren't peddling empty optimism. They were pointing to a profound truth: events themselves are neutral. It's our perception that gives them meaning. that turns a setback into a disaster or a stepping stone. Think about a job rejection. For one person, it's proof they're not good enough, a crushing blow to their confidence. For another, it's a nudge towards something better, a chance to refine their skills or explore a new path. Same event, wildly different realities. This isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. Our brains don't process raw reality. They filter it through beliefs, past experiences, and expectations. Two people stuck in the same rainstorm. One curses the weather, the other dances in it. The rain didn't change, the story they told themselves about it did. The Stoics called this impressions the raw data of life, and assent, the meaning we attach to it, that gap between what happens and how we interpret it. That's where your power lies. Here's the practice. Next time you're facing a challenge, pause and ask, what story am I telling myself about this? Is that story serving you, or is it stealing your power? Because here's the secret the Stoics knew. When you change the narrative, you change the experience. A delayed flight isn't just frustration, it's unexpected time to read. A criticism isn't just painful, it's data to improve. This isn't about denying difficulty, it's about refusing to let difficulty define you. So take a moment now, recall a recent setback. What meaning did you assign to it, and what if you chose a different one? Seneca once wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Just sit with that for a moment. Imagine having a built-in pause button between what happens to you and how you respond. A space where emotions don't dictate your actions, where clarity replaces chaos. That's cognitive detachment, not suppressing how you feel, but stepping back just far enough to see the bigger picture. Think of it like watching a storm from a window. You acknowledge the rain, but you're not soaked by it. The Stoics weren't telling us to become emotionless robots. They were teaching us to stop being hijacked by every passing feeling. Take a workplace conflict, for example. A colleague takes credit for your idea in a meeting. Your first impulse might be anger, maybe even lashing out. But what if instead you took Seneca's advice and paused? That tiny gap lets you ask, what outcome do I actually want? Retaliation might feel satisfying in the moment, but will it help your reputation or your goals? Detachment gives you the chance to respond strategically, maybe by calmly setting the record straight later, or using it as motivation to showcase your contributions even more visibly. The insult didn't disappear, but your suffering from it does the moment you refuse to let it control you. Here's the practice. Next time you feel a surge of emotion, frustration, hurt, even excitement, try the pause and reflect technique. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4. In that 12-second window, ask yourself, is this reaction serving me? You're not dismissing your feelings, you're choosing whether to let them drive. It's like rewiring your brain to respond instead of react. The Stoics called this prosouch, attention to your inner world. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes to meet life's curveballs with intention rather than impulse. Detachment isn't indifference, it's empowerment. It's recognizing that between what happens and what you do next, there's a space, and in that space lies your freedom. There's a phrase that captures the heart of Stoicism like no other, Amofati, the love of fate. While Nietzsche popularized the idea, the Stoics were living it centuries earlier. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "The obstacle becomes the way." Not around the obstacle, not despite it, through it. That's the radical shift in perspective Amofati invites, not just accepting what happens, but embracing it as if you'd chosen it yourself. Consider Seneca, one of Rome's greatest Stoic thinkers. When the Emperor Claudius exiled him to Corsica, a barren island far from Rome's intellectual heart, he didn't crumble. Instead, he wrote letters that became foundational Stoic texts, turned isolation into introspection, and later returned to Rome wiser, and more influential than ever. His exile wasn't a detour, it was the path. That's Amofati in action, recognizing that every twist in the road, even the painful ones, is part of your story's fabric. Here's the secret the Stoics uncovered. Adversity doesn't block growth, it fuels it. A muscle only strengthens under resistance. A sailboat only moves forward when the wind opposes it. So why do we treat life's challenges like enemies? Imagine standing in front of two doors, one labeled comfort and the other growth. They're always the same door. The moments that feel like setbacks, the missed promotion, the failed relationship, the illness are often the very experiences that shape your depth, resilience, and capacity for joy. Let's bring this home. Think of a challenge you're facing right now. Maybe it's a project that's hitting roadblocks or a personal goal that feels out of reach. Now ask, what if this isn't happening to me, but for me? What if the frustration you're feeling is the friction needed to polish you into something sharper? Amofati isn't about slapping a smile on hardship. It's about trusting the process. A sculptor doesn't resent the chisel. Every strike reveals the art within the stone. This mindset turns life into a collaborative dance rather than a series of collisions. When you stop resisting fate and start working with it, you unlock a curious paradox. The things you once feared become your teachers. The late nights become clarity, the criticism becomes refinement, even loss becomes a reminder of what truly matters. The Stoics didn't just endure hardship, they mined it for gold. And that's the invitation here, to stop asking why is this happening and start asking what can this reveal, because when you love fate, even the storm feels like part of the voyage. Stoics don't just endure discomfort, they seek it. That might sound counterintuitive in a world obsessed with convenience, but here's why they did it. Discomfort is the gym for your resilience. Think of it like mental weightlifting. Just as lifting heavier weights makes your body stronger, voluntarily facing small hardships trains your mind to handle life's inevitable challenges with calm and clarity. The ancient Stoics practiced this daily, sleeping on the floor, wearing thin clothes in winter, fasting for periods. These weren't acts of self-punishment, they were rehearsals for adversity. Because here's the truth they understood. When you willingly step into discomfort, you strip it of its power over you. Take cold showers, a modern example of this ancient practice. That initial shock of icy water triggers the same stress response as a sudden setback. Your heart races, your muscles tense, your instinct screams to escape. But when you stay under that water, breathing through the discomfort, you're doing more than just toughening up. You're teaching your nervous system a profound lesson. I can handle this. And that lesson spills over into every area of life. The next time your boss criticizes your work or your flight gets cancelled, your brain doesn't panic. It remembers, I've faced worse and survived. This isn't about masochism, it's about mastery. Modern psychology backs this up with something called stress inoculation, the idea that exposing yourself to manageable stress builds resilience against future challenges. It's why Navy SEAL train in freezing water and sleep deprivation before deployment. They're not just testing physical limits, they're proving to themselves that their minds won't break under pressure. And you don't need a military regimen to apply this. Start small. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Wake up 30 minutes earlier to meditate, or have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. These micro-challenges rewire your relationship with discomfort, turning it from something you fear into something you use. Consider the entrepreneur who launches a side project while working full-time. The late nights and uncertainty aren't just hurdles, they're conditioning. Every hour spent problem solving when exhausted, every rejection from a potential client is another rep in the mental gym. And when their business finally takes off, They don't crumble under the pressure of success because they've already built the resilience to sustain it. That's the Stoic secret. Voluntary discomfort isn't preparation for some hypothetical future, it's training for today. Because life doesn't wait until you're ready to test you. So here's your challenge this week. Pick one tiny act of voluntary discomfort. Maybe it's leaving your phone behind during lunch, tackling the task you've been procrastinating first thing in the morning, or sitting with silence instead of filling it with noise. Notice the urge to resist the mental squirming and lean into it anyway. That moment where you choose discomfort over convenience is where your agency lies. Because resilience isn't something you're born with, it's something you build one small, intentional act at a time. And the more you practice, the more you'll realize discomfort isn't your enemy. It's your most unexpected ally. Seneca once advised, rehearse in your mind exile, torture, war, shipwreck. At first glance, that sounds bleak. Why dwell on potential disasters? But here's the Stoic twist. By mentally walking through life's worst-case scenarios before they happen, you strip them of their power to shock or paralyze you. This practice, called Premeditation Malorum, the premeditation of evils, wasn't about pessimism. It was about vaccination. Just as exposing your body to a weakened virus builds immunity, exposing your mind to adversity in advance builds emotional resilience. Picture this: you're about to ask for a raise. Your palms sweat just thinking about it. Now imagine sitting with Seneca's exercise the night before, not just worrying but strategizing. What if your boss says no? You'd reflect on why that rejection wouldn't define your worth, how it might reveal opportunities elsewhere, or how to negotiate differently next time. By rehearsing the sting before it happens, you're not caught off guard. The rejection, if it comes, feels familiar, something you've already navigated in your mind. That's the genius of Premeditation Malorum. It turns anxiety into preparation. The Stoics weren't suggesting you obsess over every possible disaster. They were teaching targeted mental rehearsal. Take a public speaker who imagines forgetting their lines, the audience's murmurs, the heat of the spotlight. When it actually happens, they don't freeze. They've already practiced recovering gracefully, pivoting to a story, or even laughing it off. The fear of failure loses its edge because failure itself has been demystified. Modern psychology calls this stress exposure, and it's why astronauts train in simulators or why firefighters run drills. Familiarity breeds competence, not contempt. Here's how to apply this today. Pick an upcoming challenge, a tough conversation, a job interview, a health test. Close your eyes and walk through it in detail, not as a passive victim but as a Stoic strategist. What's the worst that could reasonably happen? How would you respond with wisdom rather than panic? Notice how, once visualized, the monster under the bed shrinks to manageable size. That mental rehearsal does something remarkable. It moves adversity from the realm of the terrifying unknown into the territory of the familiar, and the familiar is always easier to face. The true power of this practice lies in its aftermath. When you've mentally weathered a storm, you stop dreading the clouds. A project falling apart becomes a chance to flex your problem-solving skills. A betrayal becomes a lesson in discernment. Even grief, when approached with this preparatory lens, becomes less about being shattered and more about honoring what was lost while reaffirming your capacity to endure. That's the Stoic paradox. By willingly touching the cold edges of life's uncertainties, you warm yourself against their chill. So tonight, before sleep, try Seneca's exercise, not to invite darkness, but to prove to yourself that you can find light even there. In that pause, your freedom lies. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor who echoed Stoic principles, put it perfectly: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. That tiny gap, maybe just a second or two, is where the entire Stoic mindset comes alive. It's the difference between reacting on autopilot and responding with intention. Think about the last time someone cut you off in traffic or left a snippy comment on your social media post. Your body probably tensed up instantly, your pulse quickened, maybe even your fingers hovered over the keyboard ready to fire back. That's the stimulus, but right before the reaction, that's the space the Stoics spent their lives widening. Here's how they did it: mindfulness, long before it became a buzzword. The Stoics practiced prosauch, a kind of hyper-awareness of their own thoughts and impulses. Imagine walking through life with an inner observer, someone tapping you on the shoulder the moment your emotions start to hijack you. Wait, why does this bother me? Is my reaction proportional? What do I actually control here? That's the Stoic pause in action. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about intercepting it before it drives the car. Let's take something painfully modern: online criticism. You pour hours into a project, share it proudly, and someone replies with, "This is mediocre at best." Your first instinct might be to lash out, defend, or worse, internalize it as truth. But what if, instead of hitting send on that fiery reply, you took a literal breath? Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, 12 seconds total. In that time, you might realize, this person doesn't know me. Their opinion changes nothing about my work's value. Maybe they're having a bad day. Suddenly, the insult loses its fangs. That's the space Frankl and the Stoics revered, the moment where you reclaim authorship of your story. The beauty of this practice: it's trainable like a muscle. Start small today. Notice your automatic reactions. When your coffee spills, when your kid interrupts your work call, when the Wi-Fi cuts out, pause. Even for half a second, ask yourself, what's the most useful version of me in this moment? Because here's the secret: no event, no comment, no external chaos can force you to react. That power is always, always yours. The pause isn't just a gap, it's the birthplace of your agency. And the more you cultivate it, the more unshakable you become. Epictetus drew a line in the sand that changes everything. There are things that are, and there are things that we say about them. The rain falling, that's a fact. Calling it bad because it cancelled your picnic, that's a judgment, a story you've layered on top of reality. And here's the radical Stoic insight: suffering isn't caused by the facts themselves, but by the judgments we glue to them. Think about how often we do this: labeling traffic as frustrating, criticism as devastating, delays as pointless. But strip away those labels, and what remains? Just events, neutral, waiting for us to assign them meaning. Take a Monday morning meeting that gets rescheduled last minute. Your initial reaction might be annoyance: now my whole day's thrown off. But pause and dissect that. The fact is simple: a calendar invite changed. The judgment that it's disruptive, unfair, or stressful is optional. The Stoics practiced this mental dissection like surgeons, cutting away assumptions to see events as they truly were. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly in his Meditations: if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your own estimate of it. That shift from "this is terrible" to "this simply is where emotional freedom begins. Let's try this with something universal: rejection. The fact might be they said no. The judgments we pile on: I'm not good enough, this ruins everything, they must hate me. See how the weight comes not from the event but from the narrative. Now imagine holding that rejection like a scientist examining a rock. No praise, no blame, just curiosity. Interesting, they declined. What data does this give me? That's Stoic objectivity in action. Here's your challenge: grab paper and list 3 recent bad events. Maybe it's your flight delay, a friend's careless comment, or a project setback. Now rewrite each one as a neutral fact. My flight was delayed 3 hours instead of this ruined my trip. Notice how the emotional charge dissolves when you remove the editorializing. This isn't about pretending things don't matter. It's about recognizing that you decide how much they matter. The same rain that ruins a hike is the reason flowers bloom. The same critique that stings today might steer you toward improvement tomorrow. The Stoics knew this. When you stop arguing with reality, you gain the clarity to work with it. A farmer doesn't waste energy cursing drought, they adapt their crops. A sailor doesn't blame the wind, they adjust the sails. Your power lies not in controlling every event, but in refining your interpretations. So next time life throws a curveball, ask, what's the raw fact here, and what story am I telling myself about it? That gap between event and interpretation is where your freedom lies, and where suffering ends. Imagine seeing your life from space. How small would your problems seem? That's exactly what Marcus Aurelius did when he practiced what he called the view from above. He'd mentally zoom out, picturing himself from the vantage point of the stars, watching the tiny drama of human life unfold below. From there, the emperor's throne, his political battles, even his personal griefs shrank to mere specks in the grand sweep of time. This wasn't escapism, it was emotional alchemy. By stepping back, he transformed overwhelming emotions into manageable perspective. Take a personal conflict, maybe an argument with a coworker that left you seething. In the moment, it feels all-consuming, like the world hinges on who was right. But fast forward a year, will that exchange even matter? Will you remember their exact words or the heat in your chest? Probably not. That's the power of temporal distancing, a concept modern psychology now confirms. When we project ourselves into the future, our present struggles lose their grip. The Stoics were doing this 2,000 years before brain scans showed how perspective physically calms the amygdala, our brain's panic button. Here's how to make this practical. Next time you're spiraling over a problem, a rejection, a mistake, a petty slight, try this exercise. Close your eyes and imagine watching the scene from a mountaintop or an airplane window. See the buildings like toys, the cars like ants. Notice how small your situation appears in the vastness. Then go further. Picture yourself a year from now looking back. What advice would that future, wiser version of you give? Chances are they'd say, this wasn't the catastrophe you thought. Marcus Aurelius wrote, keep before your eyes the vastness of time and space. He wasn't dismissing life's challenges, he was rebalancing their weight. That project deadline stressing you, in 5 years it'll be a vague memory. That awkward social moment haunting you, it's already forgotten by everyone else. This perspective doesn't negate your feelings, it puts them in proportion. Like adjusting a camera lens, it brings the whole picture into focus, so you stop mistaking a single frame for the entire film. So when the noise of daily life grows deafening, remember the Stoic zoom out. Your problems aren't trivial, but they are also not all-encompassing. The colleague who annoyed you is fighting battles you can't see. The traffic jam is a blip in a lifetime of journeys. Even your greatest failures, when viewed against the backdrop of centuries, become just one thread in a much larger tapestry. That's the gift of the view from above, not to minimize your experience, but to free you from its illusion of permanence. Because when you see your life as part of something vast, you stop sweating the small stuff and start navigating with the calm of someone who knows the storm is just weather. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who shaped Epictetus, offered a radical idea for his time and ours. If you accomplish something good with hard work, the labor passes quickly, but the good endures. If you do something shameful in pursuit of pleasure, the pleasure passes quickly, but the shame endures. But here's what he's really saying. True abundance isn't about accumulating more. It's about recognizing the worth of what's already here. While modern culture screams that happiness lies just one purchase away, the Stoics whispered a counterintuitive truth: you already hold it. Think about how we measure enough today. Scrolling through social media, it's easy to feel like everyone else has more success, more vacations, more perfect relationships. But the Stoics would call this a trick of perspective. Imagine two people drinking from identical glasses. One sees half empty, the other half full. The glass hasn't changed, the story about the glass has. That's Stoic gratitude in action, not denying life's hardships, but refusing to let them eclipse life's gifts. Consider Seneca's letters describing his exile. He wrote not of missing Rome's luxuries, but of discovering the richness of time to think, the crisp air of Corsica, the clarity that comes when external noise fades. He even joked that exile stripped away the necessities he never actually needed. That's the pivot. Gratitude isn't passive acceptance, it's active reorientation. When you focus on what's present rather than absent, lack transforms into sufficiency. Here's the experiment. Pause right now and name 3 ordinary things you're grateful for today. Maybe it's the warmth of your coffee mug, the fact that your legs carry you without pain, or even the quiet moment you're in right now. Notice how, as you list them, your brain shifts gears. That's neuroplasticity at work. Every gratitude practice physically rewires your neural pathways to scan for abundance rather than scarcity. The Stoics did this daily. Marcus Aurelius began his mornings by mentally cataloging simple blessings: the smell of bread baking, the sound of his children laughing, the way sunlight fell across his study. Modern research confirms what these philosophers knew. Gratitude isn't just spiritual fluff. It lowers cortisol by 23%, boosts serotonin production, and literally expands your field of vision, making you better at spotting solutions. But here's the catch: it only works if you move beyond the abstract. Saying, "I'm grateful for health," is vague. Savoring the way your lungs fill effortlessly with air is transformative. So let's contrast this with consumer culture's endless chase. Ads don't sell products, they sell dissatisfaction. That gym equipment promises you'll finally be enough. That vacation package whispers that happiness lies elsewhere. Stoicism flips the script. Contentment isn't a destination. It's the lens through which you view your current coordinates. Try this tonight. Before sleep, revisit your day not to tally wins or losses, but to collect tiny, overlooked gifts, the way rain tapped rhythmically on your window. The stranger who held the door, the fact that you have a bed at all, something half the world's population lacks. This isn't about guilt or forced positivity. It's about recalibrating your attention to the quiet miracles already present. Because when you stop measuring your life against what's missing, you start noticing how much you've always had. Epictetus cut to the heart of human suffering with one brutal question: what do you desire, things within your control or things beyond it? Most of us spend our lives chasing the second category: approval, promotions, perfect relationships, then wonder why we feel like puppets on strings. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire, and it's not about suppressing wants, but about redirecting them toward what actually nourishes your soul. Picture 2 people at a gym, one obsessively checking the mirror for visible abs, the other focused on the rhythm of their breath and the strength in their movements. Both are working hard, but only one is free. Here's the Stoic secret: frustration isn't caused by unmet desires, but by misplaced ones. When you tie your happiness to externals, likes on a post, your boss's praise, even the weather, you hand over your peace to forces you can't command. It's like building a house on shifting sand. Epictetus warned his students, freedom isn't the right to act as you please, but the right to align your desires with what's truly yours to control. That shift from craving outcomes to valuing how you show up is where real power begins. Take modern status symbols. You might covet a luxury car, imagining the respect it'll bring. But what happens when a coworker buys a newer model? Suddenly, your joy deflates like a punctured tire. Contrast that with investing in character, patience, integrity, resilience. No one can outshine you in those. No market crash can devalue them. That's the Stoic litmus test. Is this desire anchored in something no one can take away? Let's make this practical. Think of something you've been yearning for lately: a bigger house, a romantic partner, more followers. Now ask, does this serve my growth or just my ego? If you lost it tomorrow, would you collapse, or would your core remain unshaken? The ancient Stoics practiced negative visualization, imagining the loss of what they cherished, not to dwell in pessimism, but to expose fragile desires. Try it now. Visualize life without that thing you're chasing. Notice the fear that arises. That's your signal. Either the desire needs releasing, or your relationship to it needs refining. This isn't about renouncing ambition, it's about sanctifying it. Want to write a book? Focus not on bestseller lists, but on the daily discipline of showing up to the page. Dream of a loving relationship. Cultivate the kindness and patience that magnetize connection, rather than obsessing over finding the one. The paradox. When you stop demanding that life deliver specific outcomes, you start noticing how many gifts were hidden in plain sight. A sunset doesn't need to go viral to be beautiful. A quiet moment of reflection can hold more depth than a standing ovation. So here's your challenge. Pick one desire you've been clinging to. Not the superficial "I want ice cream" kind, but the deep, identity level "I'll be happy when" variety. Hold it up to the Stoic mirror. Is this within my control? If not, what's the version of this desire that is? Maybe it's not about landing the promotion, but about becoming the kind of person who earns it. Not about being loved, but about loving fearlessly. That's the alchemy of the discipline of desire, transforming cravings into compass points, guiding you toward what truly lasts. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal a line that cuts through 2,000 years of noise. Do every act of your life as if it were your last. At first glance, that might sound morbid, but the Stoic emperor wasn't talking about urgency. He was talking about presence. Think about how you brushed your teeth this morning, drove to work, scrolled through emails. How much of that did you actually experience versus just endure on autopilot? That's the difference the Stoics zeroed in on. Action versus intentional action. One fills time, the other shapes a life. Consider two co-workers at the same desk. One spends their day drowning in reactive busyness, jumping between tabs, answering messages as they ping, their attention fractured by every notification. The other starts with a single question: what would make today meaningful? They batch tasks, focus deeply on one project at a time, and pause between meetings to realign with purpose. Both are productive, but only one is practicing the Stoic discipline of action, the art of marrying motion with meaning. This isn't about doing more, it's about being more in what you do. The Stoics called this prohesis, the will to choose your actions with clarity rather than compulsion. Imagine you're washing dishes. On autopilot, it's a chore to rush through. But with Stoic attention, it becomes a meditation: the warmth of water, the rhythm of scrubbing, the satisfaction of order restored. Same action, radically different experience. That's the power of intentionality. It transforms mundane moments into micro-practices of virtue. Here's how this plays out in modern life. Say you're stuck in a tedious meeting. The autopilot response: nod while mentally drafting your grocery list. The Stoic approach: listen actively, not because the content is riveting, but because how you show up is your domain. Maybe you spot an opportunity to ask a clarifying question or notice a colleague's unspoken frustration worth addressing later. When action is tied to purpose, even drudgery becomes a canvas for growth. So let's bring this home. Pick one routine moment today, making coffee, walking the dog, even waiting in line. Instead of treating it as dead time, engage with it fully. Feel the weight of the mug in your hand. Notice the way your pet's leash tugs. Observe the faces around you without judgment. This is Stoicism in motion, not grand gestures but small, conscious acts that train your mind to inhabit your life rather than just pass through it. Because when you stop conflating movement with meaning, you start discovering how much meaning was there all along. Not every thought deserves your belief. That's the cornerstone of the Stoic discipline of assent, the practice of interrogating your knee-jerk interpretations before letting them steer your emotions. Think of your mind as a courtroom where every initial impression is a witness on the stand, not a verdict. Just because a thought shows up doesn't mean it gets to dictate your reality. Consider this: your friend replies to your text with a short, "fine." Instantly, your brain spins a story: "They're mad at me. I must have done something wrong." But pause, that's not a fact, it's an impression. The Stoics would label it as such, a passing mental whisper, not a truth carved in stone. Epictetus put it bluntly: it's not things that disturb us, but our interpretations of them. The gap between receiving an impression and granting it belief, that's where your freedom lies. Here's how this plays out in real time. You walk into a meeting and your boss barely glances at you. The automatic assumption: I'm in trouble. But what if you've just caught them mid-thought, or they're preoccupied with a personal matter? The Stoic move isn't to suppress the worry, it's to hold it at arm's length and ask, what evidence supports this? 9 times out of 10, you'll find your brain's first draft is riddled with plot holes. Try this today. Pick one automatic assumption you've had, maybe interpreting a stranger's silence as rudeness or a rainy day as ruining your plans. Label it out loud: this is just an impression. That tiny act of mental distancing is like pulling weeds before they take root. Modern cognitive therapy echoes this ancient wisdom. Thoughts aren't facts, and the more you practice spotting the difference, the less power they have to hijack your peace. The discipline of assent isn't about dismissing your perceptions, it's about testing them. Imagine training yourself to meet every mental certainty with gentle skepticism. Is this true? Is it helpful? Could there be another explanation? That's how you turn reactive emotions into thoughtful responses. Because when you stop conflating impressions with reality, you start seeing the world and yourself with clearer eyes. Seneca once wrote, "Fire tests gold, adversity tests the strong." That's more than just poetic imagery, it's a blueprint for how pressure shapes us into something unbreakable. Think about literal gold: the hotter the flame, the more impurities burn away, leaving only the purest metal behind. The Stoics saw human character the same way. It's not that hardship builds resilience, it reveals it, and in the process refines it. This idea echoes in modern thought too. Nassim Taleb called it antifragility, the rare quality of systems that don't just endure chaos but thrive because of it. Your bones grow denser under stress, your immune system strengthens after exposure. Why would your mind be any different? Take Cato the Younger, the Stoic statesman who became a living symbol of defiance. When Julius Caesar marched on Rome, seizing power, Cato didn't flee or compromise. He stood his ground, knowing it would cost him everything. And when defeat became inevitable, he chose death over surrender, not out of despair, but as a final act of moral clarity. To the outside world, it looked like failure, but to the Stoics, Cato's legacy was proof. Adversity doesn't destroy true strength, it illuminates it. His story wasn't about losing, it was about showing what couldn't be taken from him. Now, here's the question that turns philosophy into practice. What's your fire? Not the hypothetical challenges you fear, but the real ones you've already faced. That job loss that forced you to pivot, the heartbreak that taught you self-worth. The failure that became a stepping stone. Look back and trace the contours of your growth. Chances are your sharpest edges were honed in the hardest moments. Modern psychology confirms this. We don't just get over trauma, we adapt to it, often emerging with skills we wouldn't have gained otherwise. Post-traumatic growth isn't a myth, it's science. But here's where Stoicism goes deeper. It's not about waiting for life to test you, it's about inviting the tests. Like a sailor who practices in stormy seas so calm waters feel effortless. That's why the Stoics voluntarily slept on hard beds, endured cold showers, fasted periodically. They weren't masochists, they were preparing. Because when you willingly step into discomfort, you rewrite your relationship with it. The next time life hands you a crisis, your brain doesn't panic. It remembers, I've trained for this. So try this reframe today. Whatever challenge you're facing, ask not why is this happening to me, but what is this revealing in me? Is it patience, creativity, grit? Adversity is never just an obstacle, it's a mirror, and the reflection staring back is the person you're becoming. Epictetus loved chariot races, but not for the reasons you'd think. To him, they were the perfect metaphor for life. Picture this. A charioteer can control how well he steers, how tightly he holds the reins, even the effort he puts in, but the road. That's another story. Rocks, other races, sudden storms, none of that's up to him. The Stoics saw life the same way. You're not the road engineer, you're the driver. And here's the painful truth we all learn eventually. White-knuckling the reins won't smooth out the bumps ahead. Modern parenting exposes this illusion vividly. You pack nutritious lunches, hire tutors, cheer at every game, all to give your child every advantage. But then comes the teenage years, and suddenly, you're straight a student is skipping class or your athlete quits the team. The harder you push, the more they resist. That's the paradox of control. The more you try to force an outcome, the more life reminds you some things were never yours to command. The Stoics weren't saying don't care. They were saying care differently. Instead of fixating on whether your child gets into an Ivy League school, something you can't guarantee, focus on what you can shape, modeling resilience, fostering curiosity, being present. The irony, kids often thrive because of that foundation, not in spite of it. This applies everywhere. Obsessing over your company's stock price won't move the market. Checking the weather app 10 times won't stop the rain. Even our bodies try commanding your heart to slow its pounding before a speech. The more we demand certainty from an uncertain world, the more we suffer. Seneca put it starkly, you're miserable because you confuse what's up to you with what isn't. That's the root of anxiety, mistaking influence for authority. Here's the practice. Grab your phone and open your notes app. List 3 things you've been stressing over that, if you're honest, aren't truly yours to control. Maybe it's your adult son's career choices, the outcome of a court case, or whether your aging parent follows medical advice. Now, beside each, write one action that is within your power. For the son, sending job leads without judgment. For the legal battle, preparing your testimony thoroughly. For the parent, offering rides to appointments without nagging. This isn't surrender, it's strategic focus. Like the charioteer, you're redirecting energy from the bumps in the road to the strength of your grip. The freedom in this approach sneaks up on you. When you stop pretending the universe owes you smooth pavement, you start appreciating your capacity to navigate potholes. That's the Stoic shift, from frustration at the storm to pride in your seamanship. Because control was always an illusion, Mastery was the point all along. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal a line that defies human instinct: "Love the humble art of loving those who wrong you." At first read, that sounds almost impossible. How do you summon warmth for someone who's just insulted you or undermined your work? But here's the Stoic twist. Compassion isn't about condoning bad behavior. It's about refusing to let someone else's actions dictate your inner peace. Picture a colleague who takes credit for your idea in a meeting. Your pulse races, your face flushes. That's natural, but the Stoic pause kicks in before you react. Instead of firing back, you consider what pain or insecurity might be driving them. That shift from seeing others as adversaries to recognizing their humanity is where Stoic empathy begins. This isn't about swallowing your pride or playing the martyr. It's about recognizing a profound truth. People act badly not because they're evil, but because they're confused about what's truly good. Epictetus framed it this way: when someone steals your cloak, remember they likely believe possessions bring happiness. That misunderstanding doesn't excuse theft, but it reframes the thief as someone lost, not monstrous. Apply this to modern life. The coworker who throws you under the bus isn't a villain. They're likely terrified of being exposed as inadequate. The friend who flakes on plans isn't rejecting you. They're drowning in their own unresolved chaos. Now, here's where Stoicism balances on a razor's edge. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. You can hold someone accountable and wish them growth. Imagine your boss publicly criticizes your project. The emotional response might be defensiveness or shame. The Stoic response: listen for valid feedback beneath the harsh delivery. Address factual inaccuracies calmly and privately reflect: is this person overworked? Insecure about their own performance, you're not excusing their tone, you're simply choosing not to let it derail your clarity. This practice, compassionate detachment, isn't passive. It's a strategic recalibration of energy. Think of it like a surgeon's scalpel, precise enough to remove toxicity without damaging healthy tissue. When you stop taking others' actions personally, you gain the space to respond rather than react. The critic becomes a teacher, the rival becomes a mirror, even the toxic relative becomes a lesson in boundaries. So here's your challenge this week. Pick one difficult interaction: a snippy barrister, a dismissive client, a family member who pushes your buttons. Before responding, ask two questions. What might this person be carrying that I can't see? And what's the most useful version of me in this moment? That tiny gap between their behavior and your response is where Stoic compassion lives. Not as a fluffy ideal, but as a daily practice of reclaiming your peace while leaving room for theirs. Because when you stop demanding others change before you can be at ease, you discover an unexpected truth: your calm was never in their hands to begin with. Seneca once observed, "Life is long if you know how to use it," a paradox that cuts to the heart of Stoic mindfulness. We measure our days in years, but we live them in moments. Yet how often do we let those moments slip through our fingers, lost to regrets about yesterday or anxieties about tomorrow? The Stoics weren't just philosophers, they were pioneers of presence, teaching what modern psychology now confirms: true peace isn't found in rewinding or fast-forwarding, but in pressing play on the now. Picture this: you're at a family dinner, surrounded by laughter and clinking plates, but your mind's elsewhere, rehashing a work conflict or rehearsing tomorrow's presentation. The food tastes bland, the jokes fall flat, and before you know it, the evening's gone. That's what Seneca warned against when he wrote, "We are not given a short life, but we make it short by wasting time." The thief isn't the clock, it's our own distracted minds. Stoic mindfulness isn't about emptying your thoughts like some meditation apps suggest. It's about anchoring them. Imagine your attention as a ship's rope. When you tie it to the past or future, you drift. But when you moor it to the present, you stabilize. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself, concentrate every minute on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. Not as a chore, but as an act of reverence for the only time you ever truly own. This breath, this step, this conversation. Here's how to make this tangible today. Try the Stoic senses check-in. Pause wherever you are and name one thing you're seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. The steam curling off your coffee. The hum of traffic outside, the texture of your shirt against your skin. This isn't just poetic reflection, it's neural training. Each sensory anchor pulls you back from mental time travel into the vividness of now. Modern research shows this practice reduces cortisol levels by nearly 20%, proof that ancient wisdom anticipated neuroscience by millennia. Consider the irony. We stress about not having enough time, yet we squander the very moments we're given. The Stoics proposed a radical alternative: treat time as currency and spend it where it actually exists, the present. When you catch yourself catastrophizing about next month's deadline, ask, can I act on this right now? If not, return to what you can do, finishing this sentence, listening to this song, feeling this breeze. The future will come regardless. Your power lies in how fully you meet it when it arrives. So here's your challenge. Pick one routine today: brushing your teeth, walking to your car, waiting for a meeting to start, and inhabit it completely. Notice the bristles against your gums, the rhythm of your footsteps, the weight of your body in the chair, not as a distraction from important thoughts, but as a declaration. This, too, is life. Not preparation for living, but living itself, because when you stop treating the present as a hallway to somewhere else, you start discovering it was the room you'd been searching for all along. Epictetus offered a piece of advice that feels almost radical in our hyper-connected world. Be silent more than you speak. At first glance, that might sound passive, like rolling over in the face of conflict. But the Stoics saw silence differently. It wasn't about weakness, it was about leverage. Think of a chess player who refuses to move impulsively, conserving their pieces while their opponent exhausts themselves. Strategic silence works the same way. It's not the absence of a response, but the most potent response of all. Take social media, where arguments spread like wildfire. Someone misinterprets your post, fires off a snarky reply, and suddenly you're 3 comments deep in a debate nobody's winning. The Stoic move: don't engage. Not because you're conceding, but because you're refusing to play a rigged game. Every reply fuels the fire, while silence lets it burn out. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his rule as emperor. When faced with petty insults, he'd write privately in his journal rather than retaliate publicly. The result: his critics looked small, his dignity remained intact. But silence isn't just for diffusing conflict, it's a tool for clarity. Imagine your partner snaps at you after a long day. Your instinct might be to match their tone or defend yourself, but what if instead you paused? That quiet space lets emotions settle, revealing what's really underneath. Maybe they're stressed about work or feeling unheard. The Stoics called this the discipline of assent, withholding judgment until you've fully processed the situation, like letting muddy water settle so you can see the bottom clearly. Here's the practice. Pick one situation this week where you'd normally react instantly: a colleague's passive-aggressive email, a relative's jab at dinner, even the urge to correct a stranger online. Instead of firing back, try Stoic silence, not as suppression but as observation. Notice how the heat of the moment passes when you don't feed it, how often the other person reveals more in the quiet than they ever would in argument. And here's the paradox: by choosing not to react, you often gain more control over the outcome than any clever comeback could achieve, because silence isn't empty. It's the space where wisdom grows. The next time words threaten to tumble out in anger or pride, remember, the most powerful voice sometimes speaks loudest by saying nothing at all. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who carried the weight of Rome on his shoulders, once joked in his private journal, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I meet today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Notice what he did there. He didn't just brace himself for the day's frustrations, he painted them with such exaggerated absurdity that they became almost comical. That's the Stoic secret weapon most people miss. Humor isn't just for comedians, it's a philosophical tool for cutting tension down to size. Think about the last time you spilled coffee on your shirt before a meeting. In the moment, it feels like a catastrophe, another domino in a day already tipping toward chaos. But what if, instead of cursing your clumsiness, you chuckled at the universality of it? That's Stoic reframing in action. The spill didn't change, but your relationship to it did. The ancient Stoics understood this instinctively. Laughter doesn't trivialize problems, it shrinks them to human scale. When Epictetus quipped, "If someone tried to take control of your body and drag you around, you'd fight back. Yet we gladly hand over our minds to anyone who insults us," he wasn't just making a point, he was puncturing the drama with wit. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies show that finding humor in stressful situations lowers cortisol levels and boosts problem-solving creativity. It's why emergency room doctors often crack dark jokes during crises, not because they're insensitive, but because laughter acts as a pressure valve. The Stoic version is subtler but just as potent. Imagine your train gets delayed, making you late for work. You could spiral into frustration, or you could channel Seneca, who wrote, "Time discovers truth," and wryly add, "Apparently, it's also discovering every possible delay on this route." The delay hasn't vanished, but its power over your mood has. Here's the practice today. Pick one annoyance that normally wins you up: a glitchy software update, a colleague's backhanded compliment, even the grocery store's eternal checkout line. Instead of fuming, try this. Exaggerate the situation to ridiculous proportions in your mind. Picture the software as a rebellious teenager giving you attitude. Visualize the checkout line stretching into next week. By turning frustration into farce, you're not denying reality, you're disarming it. Because here's the truth the Stoics knew: life's irritations gain weight when we take them too seriously. Laughter isn't escapism, it's perspective. And sometimes the most philosophical response to chaos is a well-timed eye roll at the universe's sense of humor. Seneca once observed that time heals what reason cannot, a quiet truth that runs counter to our modern obsession with instant results. Think about how we measure success today. Promotions should happen within years, not decades. Fitness transformations must take weeks, not seasons. Even relationships are judged by how quickly they reach milestones. But the Stoics saw time differently, not as an enemy to outrun, but as a teacher whose lessons unfold at their own pace. Impatience, they realized, isn't just a minor frustration. It's a form of self-inflicted suffering. When we demand that life move faster than it does, we're like sailors cursing the wind instead of adjusting our sails. Consider career growth. You might watch a peer land a coveted role while you're still grinding in the trenches. The reflexive response: anxiety, envy, maybe even resentment. But the Stoic pause invites a different question. What if their path isn't yours to walk? Marcus Aurelius spent decades as heir apparent before becoming emperor, years of preparation most of us would chafe against. Yet those very years honed the wisdom that made his reign extraordinary. Patience in Stoicism isn't passive waiting, it's active trust in the process. Like a farmer who doesn't dig up seeds to check their progress, you water your efforts consistently, knowing growth happens underground long before it's visible. This philosophy clashes with our dopamine-driven world, where every delay feels like a personal affront. Traffic jams, slow Wi-Fi, delayed replies, we react as if time owes us something. But the Stoics reframe delays as opportunities to practice apatheia, not apathy, but emotional equilibrium. Picture two commuters stuck on the same stalled train. One fumes, checking the clock every 30 seconds. The other opens a book, savoring unexpected reading time. The delay hasn't changed, only their relationship to it has. That's the power of Stoic patience. It transforms dead time into lived time. Here's the challenge. Pick one area of your life where impatience has been stealing your peace. Maybe it's comparing your creative output to someone else's viral success, or fretting over a relationship that's deepening slower than you'd like. For the next month, apply Seneca's insight. What if this very delay is the curriculum? Track not just outcomes, but what the waiting teaches you about perseverance, priorities, or the quiet joy of showing up without immediate reward. Because here's the paradox the Stoics uncovered. When you stop measuring life by the clock, you start noticing how much richness was hidden in the spaces between milestones. Time doesn't just heal, it reveals, and what it reveals is often exactly what you needed all along. Epictetus gave his students a simple but transformative exercise. Set before yourself the example of great souls. He wasn't talking about blind hero worship. This was about something far more practical. The Stoics believed you could borrow strength from those who'd walked the path before you, like tapping into a collective reservoir of wisdom when your own well runs dry. Think of it as mental time travel. When faced with a challenge, you ask, how would Socrates handle this insult? What would Marcus Aurelius say about this setback? Suddenly, you're not alone in the struggle. You're standing on the shoulders of giants. Take Socrates' trial, one of history's most striking displays of Stoic calm centuries before Stoicism even had a name. Facing execution on trumped-up charges, he didn't beg or rage. Instead, he used his final hours to discuss philosophy with friends, even refusing an escape plan because it would violate his principles. What's remarkable isn't just his composure, it's his redefinition of the situation. Where others saw an ending, he saw an opportunity to demonstrate that ideas outlive the body. Centuries later, Seneca would echo this when writing to a friend facing persecution. No one is more fearless than the man who has learned how to die. That's the power of role models. They reframe what's possible. But here's where Stoic emulation differs from modern inspiration porn. This isn't about comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. It's about reverse engineering their process. When Cato the Younger marched through the desert with his soldiers, sharing their thirst and fatigue, he wasn't performing toughness, he was practicing sympatheia, the Stoic belief that leaders endure what they ask of others. When Musonius Rufus taught philosophy while exiled to a barren island, he wasn't pretending it was pleasant, he was proving that wisdom grows anywhere. These figures aren't mythic saints, they're case studies in applied virtue. So how do you make this practical? Pick one Stoic figure this week, maybe the unshakable calm of Epictetus, the civic duty of Marcus Aurelius, or even a modern exemplar like James Stockdale, the Navy pilot who credited Stoicism for surviving 7 years as a POW. Study not just their quotes but their choices. How did they handle betrayal, bureaucracy, boredom? Then, in your own challenges, a frustrating commute, a difficult conversation, ask, what would my chosen model do here? Not to mimic them exactly, but to spark your own version of their resilience, because role models aren't crutches, they're compasses. They don't solve your problems, they show you the North Star of your own potential. And in moments when your resolve wavers, remembering that others have walked this path before can be the whisper that keeps you going. If they could, maybe I can too. Marcus Aurelius never intended his private journals to become one of history's most profound works of philosophy. He was simply doing what Stoics had done for centuries, taking stock of his day, examining his reactions, and refining his character line by line. Those pages we now call meditations weren't meant for publication. They were his training ground, and that's the secret most people miss about Stoic journaling. It's not about crafting beautiful prose or documenting events. It's about creating a mirror for your mind, one that reflects not just what happened, but how you met what happened. Think of your emotions as weather patterns. A storm rolls in anger, anxiety, envy, and it feels all-consuming in the moment. But when you pause to journal about it later, you're no longer standing in the rain, you're observing the storm from a distance. That's the power Epictetus described when he said, "We are not disturbed by things, but by the opinions we form about them." Your journal becomes the space where you separate the event from the story you told yourself about it. Here's how to start. Tonight, carve out 10 quiet minutes and ask 3 questions. What triggered me today? How did I react? What would a wiser version of me have done differently? No fluff, no self-judgment, just raw observation. Maybe you snapped at a coworker when they interrupted you. The trigger wasn't their action. It was your belief that they disrespected you. Your reaction, a sharp tone that escalated tension. The wiser response, a deep breath and a calm. Let me finish this thought. This isn't about rewriting history. It's about rewiring your instincts for next time. Modern research shows why this works. The act of translating emotions into words, a process psychologists call affect labeling, reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's panic button. It's why studies find that people who journal about stressful experiences lower their blood pressure and improve problem-solving skills. The Stoics didn't have fMRI machines, but they understood the alchemy of putting turmoil onto paper. Like distilling muddy water into clarity, journaling turns reactions into lessons. Marcus didn't just vent in his diaries, he dialogued with himself. When you wake irritable, he scribbled one morning, remember, this is my chance to practice patience. That's the shift from, why is this happening to me? To, what is this revealing in me? Your journal is where you spot patterns. Do you consistently misinterpret constructive feedback as personal attacks? Does hunger or fatigue amplify your reactions? These aren't flaws, they're data points for growth. So here's your challenge. Grab any notebook, no fancy leather-bound volume required, and tonight, dissect one reaction. Not the day's highlight reel, but the moment you'd rather forget. The sigh when your partner forgot to run the dishwasher. The scrolling through envy-inducing vacation photos. Write it plainly, then ask, was that reaction useful? Did it align with who I aspire to be? The gap between those answers is where Stoic progress happens. Because awareness isn't the destination, it's the first step toward rewriting your reflexes, one page at a time. Seneca once wrote, "Life is long enough, and it's given in sufficient measure to accomplish the greatest things, if only it's well invested." At first glance, that might sound absurd in our era of packed schedules and endless to-do lists. But the Stoics weren't talking about clock time. They were pointing to a deeper truth. The real scarcity isn't days on a calendar, but attention. The moments we waste on distractions, petty grievances, and trivialities that vanish from memory by week's end. That's why they practiced memento mori, the meditation on mortality, not as morbid fixation, but as a lens to bring life into sharper focus. Imagine holding an hourglass where the sand represents your remaining time. Would you really spend those grains obsessing over a rude comment or refreshing your likes? The ancient Stoics kept skulls on their desks, not as macabre decor, but as visceral reminders. This could be your last day. Act accordingly. Modern psychology validates this practice. Studies show that people who reflect on mortality, not in fear, but in clarity make bolder life choices, prioritize relationships more deeply, and waste less energy on inconsequential drama. Think about how trivial a social media feud feels when you imagine looking back on your life from your deathbed. That's memento mori in action, using the weight of finitude to crush trivial concerns. Consider Steve Jobs' famous Stanford commencement speech where he said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." Facing pancreatic cancer, he didn't suddenly crave more meetings or accolades. He doubled down on creativity, family, and legacy. That's the Stoic shift when death becomes a compass rather than a specter. You start asking, will this matter in 5 years? Would I regret not doing this? Here's how to make this practice tangible today. Grab a notebook and write 2 lists. First, what truly matters to me, not societal expectations or fleeting desires, but the core people, values, and experiences that define your sense of a life well lived. Second, what drains my time and energy without adding meaning? Maybe it's doom scrolling, people pleasing, or replaying old grievances. Now compare the lists. The gap between them is where memento mori does its work, gently pulling you from distraction toward intention. This isn't about grim austerity, it's about liberation. When you stop fearing time's limits, you start savoring its depth. The colleague who annoys you becomes a fellow traveler sharing the same fragile journey. The delayed flight becomes bonus hours with a book you love. Even grief, when viewed through this lens, transforms from something to avoid into proof you loved deeply. The Stoics knew contemplating death isn't about dying better. It's about living better, because when every moment carries the weight of meaning, you stop waiting for someday and start crafting today. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who shaped generations of thinkers, had a radical idea for his time. Just as a single log won't burn as fiercely alone, so too the mind grows brighter. Conversation with others. He wasn't just talking about casual chats, he was pointing to something profound. Growth isn't a solo sport. Your mindset shifts deepen when they're reflected back to you, challenged and celebrated by people walking the same path. Think about the last time you tried to spot a stain on your own shirt. You might miss it entirely until someone points it out. Our blind spots work the same way. The thoughts and reactions we don't even realize are holding us back. A community holds up the mirror. Take the workout buddy effect. You might skip the gym when it's just you and your excuses. But when someone's waiting for you at the squat rack, you show up even on days when motivation's low. Stoic practice thrives on the same principle. When you tell a friend, "I'm working on pausing before reacting to criticism," suddenly, you're not just accountable to yourself. You've got someone who'll ask, "How'd that go when your boss gave you feedback yesterday?" That external nudge turns philosophy into lived action. History's greatest Stoics knew this instinctively. Seneca wrote letters to Lucilius not just to teach, but to sharpen his own thinking through dialogue. Epictetus taught in community spaces, not isolated lecture halls. Even Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, surrounded himself with philosophers who'd challenge him. They understood wisdom isn't hoarded, it's circulated. Modern research backs this up. Studies on habit formation show that when you share a goal with even one person, your success rate jumps by 65%. It's why Alcoholics Anonymous thrives on sponsorship, why mastermind groups outperform solo entrepreneurs. But here's the Stoic twist. It's not just about accountability, it's about perspective. Your friend might notice that what you call discipline looks a lot like self-punishment. Or that the acceptance you pride yourself on is actually avoidance in disguise. So here's your challenge today. Pick one Stoic insight that's resonated with you. Maybe it's the dichotomy of control or Amofati, and share it with someone. Not as a lecture, but as an invitation. I've been thinking about this, what's your take? Watch how the idea transforms when it passes between you, because the Stoic path wasn't meant to be walked alone. Every shared reflection, every "me too" or "have you considered this" is another log on the fire, burning brighter together than any of us could alone. We've traveled through centuries of Stoic wisdom together, arriving at a truth so simple yet transformative. Reality isn't something that happens to you, it's something you shape through the alchemy of your reactions. The traffic jam, the criticism, the unexpected setback, these aren't the story. The story is written in how you meet them. That's the first mindset shift, recognizing that while you can't control events, you command your response to them. Think of it like holding a remote control where the pause button is always yours to press. When you stop conflating what happens with what it means, you reclaim authorship of your life. But here's the twist: your reactions aren't just damage control, they're creative acts. Every interpretation you layer onto an event is a brushstroke on the canvas of your experience. That's the second shift, perception as power. Two people lose their jobs, one sees ruin, the other reinvention. Same event, divergent realities. The Stoics called this fantasiae, the raw impressions life hands us, and synkatathesis, the consent we give to those impressions. The gap between them is where your freedom lies, like a film director choosing which takes make the final cut. You decide which interpretations serve your growth and which to leave on the editing room floor. And then there's resilience, not as a trait you're born with, but as a skill forged through practice. No one becomes unshakable overnight. It's the cold showers taken deliberately, the difficult conversations leaned into, the daily journaling that exposes your mental blind spots. This is the third shift, strength as a verb, not a noun. The Stoics didn't wait for crisis to reveal their character. They trained for it like athletes. Musonius Rufus put it plainly: just as you develop physical strength through lifting weights, you develop mental strength by lifting discomfort. Marcus Aurelius left us a metaphor that ties it all together: the inner citadel. Picture an unassailable fortress within you, where no external event, no insult, no failure, no chaos can breach the walls unless you lower the drawbridge. You have power over your mind, not outside events, he wrote. Realize this and you will find strength. That's the ultimate Stoic promise. Your peace isn't out there in the ever-changing world. It's here in how you choose to meet that world. So here's your invitation. Pick one tool from this journey to wield this week. Maybe it's the pause before reacting, the journaling that untangles your judgments, or even the cold shower that teaches your body discomfort isn't an emergency. Start small, but start, because these aren't just ideas, they're invitations to live differently. If this resonated with you, join us as we keep exploring mindsets that don't just change how you think, but how you live. Hit subscribe and let's keep building your inner citadel one stone at a time.